So, hello everybody. Can everyone hear me okay? This isn't a huge room anyway, so yeah. So, hello everybody. Thanks for taking the time. I hope you're having a good global boot camp. It's really funny because last year I was doing this in Singapore, so it's actually good to do it at home. As you can see, my support dogs are with me. You can come say hi to them if you want to at the end. It says do not pet, but that's to make them look like they might be support dogs, which they are, of course. So, but come say hi to them at the end. They're pretty chill. And I don't get to bring my dogs to conferences because I usually don't get to do conferences in Melbourne. But who am I? My name's Sarah Young. I am a cloud security advocate at Microsoft. I do live in Melbourne, hence why I bring my pets. And that's probably like all you need to know about me, really. I don't get to do stuff in Melbourne very often, which is cool. I've also worked in security since before it was cool, because security is now cool. Maybe 5 or 6 years ago, I don't know, it became cool. So there you go. So today, going to talk about, AI, but we're going to talk about AI security. It is a big thing. There's a lot of hysteria going on about it at the moment. So I'm going to talk to you about just a bit of an introduction, level set. We'll talk about how you can understand. Am I in the way? I'm kind of like not sure where to stand here because I usually walk up and down, but the screen isn't big enough. So we'll talk about understanding AI architecture in a security context, because that's a good level set as well if you're a developer or if you're a security person. We'll talk about some of the AI attacks that are out there at the moment, and then we'll talk about the threat landscape, and finally we'll talk about things you should actually be doing if you are building AI from a security perspective. So let's crack on. So I love this stat. This is just a cool stat for level set, but I've used the word level set like 3 times already, cringe. So you can see technology adoption is increasing at a crazy rate. So smartphones, this is the number, the length of time it took to get to 100 million users. So you can see smartphones took 16 years, the internet took 7 years, Instagram put 2.5, TikTok 9 months, and ChatGPT took 2 months. So the rate at which we are adopting technology is getting crazy fast. And of course that from a security perspective is a nightmare, because it means that we have all these brand new technologies we don't understand, and then we're trying to keep up with them and secure them, and whilst lots and lots of people are using them. Back in the day, when there was a new technology, people would be quite slow to adopt, and security, it was easier for us to keep up, but of course we're not going that way. We're getting faster at adopting things, which is a bit of a challenge. So there's 2 bits to AI security. When someone talks about AI security, they might be talking about the security of AI. Oh, Mina, is this too much for you, girl? I know, you've already heard this talk. She's done. So we're talking about the security of AI, which is actually securing AI systems, or I like to deliberately call them AI-enabled applications. And the reason for that is because we talk AI, but in fact, it's really an application with some AI built into it. So it's still an application, and I think a lot of us are still losing sight of the fact it is essentially an application. So we need to look at it really as if we were securing an application. And then there's also AI for security. Now this is using AI to help us do security things. So if you follow Microsoft land, which hopefully most of you do, given that you're at this event, we released Copilot for Security a couple of weeks ago, and everyone's now putting AI into their tools to help us defend things as well. But that is not what I'm talking about today. I'm talking about the first one, which is security of AI. So this is what we're talking about. God, there are some nice graphics in here. I didn't do these. But again, just in case you don't know, what's the difference between generative AI and traditional AI? So of course, generative AI is using human language, natural language. And because of that, because there's a huge plethora of different combinations that you can have with natural language, that's reflected in the results and the output that we see from generative AI, which in traditional technology you don't normally see. You normally see we do a thing, and then we get a thing, and it's very consistent. There's not much variability, but of course in generative AI there is. From a security perspective, this is a nightmare. And of course it is very personalized. It generates outputs from lots of different places, and people confuse it with being a real person, which sucks. And I'll talk about why later. But can you see that? I'm looking at that TV screen up there and I realize you're not looking at the same one as me. I'm like, that looks too small. But traditional AI, bear in mind, AI is not new. It's just that the generative AI is new. AI has actually been around forever and it's really good at looking at patterns, but it didn't talk to you. It wasn't so personable. And it was basically limited to a set of folks who were usually data scientists or things like that. Generative AI, of course, is, it's natural language. It's very accessible. Of course, look, there's ChatGPT, Meta, et cetera, Again, just a nice level set to remember that, and also, generative AI doesn't do anything until it's been trained on a lot of data. It needs to look at so much data because effectively, and I massively oversimplify this, so I know if there's anyone in the room who's more studying this and academic, you'll kill me, but essentially all generative AI does is it's trained on loads and loads of language, and then it sees strings of words together, and then it predicts the next one. And it's just very good at predicting it. That's a very, very simplified version, but it's not smart. But is it safe? Because that's what we ask ourselves as security people. Now, we know that there's been lots of stuff in the media about is generative AI safe and all these crazy attacks, but let's look at it in kind of a less hysterical thing. There are a few, these are the main threats that we see and worries that people see out there. So there's data loss. Now this is a big one. I'll talk about it more later, and bear in mind, data loss is not a new problem in data security. It's just that generative AI is really good at finding files and data that you haven't secured. And we haven't done that well as an industry since forever. The new bit here is this unwanted AI behaviors. Now, they are things that are, AI, talking about bringing you the instructions back for a bomb or stealing copyrighted things, etc. They are new challenges that we have. And it is something that we have to worry about from a security perspective as well. Then, of course, we've got attackers, people using AI to attackers. It's not particularly widespread yet, but researchers have shown it's theoretically possible, and realistically, without sounding too negative, we can only expect that to increase as time goes on. And then, of course, there's people misusing AI and using it in the wrong way in other ways as well. So they're kind of our most things. But these are the pain points now. Have I got oh, look, my laser doesn't work. It's one of those screens where my laser doesn't go. Okay, fine. So integration is kind of one of our main security pain points. Integration is always a security pain point. Grayson, please sit down. Thank you. Grayson. This is going to be such an interesting talk. It's going to be like, Grayson, don't do this. Mina, don't do that. So let's see how many times I can not do that throughout this talk. So integration. Integration is where we always fall down in security. When we're trying to integrate new technologies, whether it's AI, whether it's an application, when you're having things talk to each other, they're usually weak points. And attackers know to go and look for them. So if you've got an application, it's talking to a storage blob, and you talk to that storage blob with a disgusting key string of things rather than a proper identity, attackers know how to get to those things. So integration shouldn't come as a surprise to anybody. And of course, as most AI things we're building are essentially applications, this is where we're going to see problems. It's not even an AI specific thing. I mentioned data and privacy. So as I said, AI is really good at finding data you haven't secured properly. So, for example, if you ask an AI model, hey, can you go and find me the payroll in our environment, the payroll files? If you haven't correctly locked down those payroll files, it's going to find it a heck of a lot quicker than like a real person would be clicking around in files. So data security, I think, is going to become a really, really it's becoming more topical already, but I think you're going to find that data security and how we actually put controls around data is going to become so much more important, and AI is going to force people's hand to do it properly, which is a good thing. But it's not a new problem. Supply chain. So did folks in here hear about the supply chain issue 3-4 weeks ago? What was it? I forget. ZX? X? What were the letters? XZ, thank you. There you go. I'm like, every time I'm like, what were the damn letters? It was at the end of the alphabet. So for anybody who doesn't know, there was uncovered about a month ago was a big supply chain attack, and threat actor who is believed to have been working for the Chinese government, had basically been uploading things into open source projects, and he's been doing it for a while, like he's only just been caught by a Microsoft researcher actually, but this is in loads of things because it's been around for years. So supply chain is a problem for everybody. Of course, the AI supply chain will be no different, so it's still going to be a problem. Now this one though, this trusted AI, this is a really new, interesting problem. So the research shows that humans, for some reason, really trust AI. We overly trust AI. So researchers did a experiment. They've done a few, but they did an experiment where they took some people, put them in a room, told them, can't remember why they told them they were there, and they said, if there's a fire alarm, this robot here will lead you to safety. And then they purposely made the people just wait. They made the robot go around, bang into walls, and do stupid things, basically show it wasn't very trustworthy. Then they set off the fire alarm, of course. The robot said, follow me, and everybody followed it. Now, and then it went straight past the fire exit and kept going further into the building, and 95% of the people still followed it. Yes, this is true. This is a true story. And for some reason, we really, really overly trust AI. And so that is a problem, though, because we know that AI makes mistakes. It can hallucinate. It can make up completely strange things. I have a friend who was asking AI about themselves, and it was telling this most fantastical story, and it sounded great, but it was completely untrue. And it was saying they had, this family and all these pets, and it was just like, what? Where are you getting this from? But the problem is, because it speaks so nicely to us and it's so eloquent, people are, overly trusting it. And I think what will end up happening, this is just my personal opinion, is that we will end up having some kind of trustworthy training, a bit like we have phishing training, where spot the phishing link. I think we'll end up having remember that your AI, you should not always trust your AI kind of thing. That's just my personal opinion. And then, of course, we've got things like hallucinations, we don't know what we don't know. Generative AI is new technology. It's not super predictable yet. Anyone will tell you that. And it's not super predictable. And there will be things that people do with it that we don't even know about yet. So there's also, we don't know what we don't know. So that's going to be interesting to see how this all evolves. But
would you put biases part of those as well? Is that part of the trusting AI?
Bias, from a security, bias is more of an ethical, responsible AI problem rather than a security-specific problem, because something being biased, I mean, you probably could, it's sort of a bit abstract. Something being biased would, although it's not good from an ethical perspective, it probably couldn't be used to compromise the security, although someone might be able to do something funky with it, because we never say never with these things. But that would be more of just the AI bias wouldn't necessarily create a security problem unless you could make the bias, make the model, I don't know, more likely to give up information it shouldn't be doing. Then maybe, but we sort of put that under responsible AI, which is sort of, responsible AI and security of AI are sort of quite, you can't fully extricate them, but probably not a security specific issue. Yes.
How would you categorize spreading of misinformation? Would that be a security issue or not?
Not really. Depends. You could see it as do you mean like just AI just making stuff up and?
Maybe it's malicious.
Can you give me an example? Even theoretical. I just want to make sure I understand your question.
Perhaps, I don't know, maybe AI is maliciously targeting a minority group for some reason.
I don't think we've seen anything like that yet. We wouldn't necessarily be AI. You can target. We've seen minority groups targeted in cybersecurity more generally. It wouldn't need to be. I mean, could a malicious actor train some AI to go for specific targets, whether it's a minority group or a particular, high-value target? Then sure, yeah, that would be possible. It it would depend. Is it a security issue? Yes, as in if you are that minority group or high value target, you need to know how to protect yourself. The problem we have with AI models, and we haven't seen this too much yet, but there's no doubt we will, is that most of these AI models are open source, and so there's nothing stopping you from pulling the AI model down and doing things with it. But equally, there's nothing to stop bad actors doing the same and using it for bad. Unfortunately, that's been the problem with open source for a very long time. So I expect that problem to continue. I think all we can do is make sure we have like the right sort of defense against it. Where it would come into possibly a security consideration from an enterprise perspective is that you would want to make sure your AI application or models that you were using internally, they were not subject to people fiddling with them and poisoning them. But that's kind of a more general problem, because you could poison a model to give out the wrong information, and even if it's just an internal thing. And that would come under the security bit, but it would only be kind of within an organizational context, really, if that makes sense. Yeah, cool. Okay, so let's have a look at understanding the AI architecture in a security context. So the reason I have this is how we sort of separate it down in Microsoft land. Even if you're not using Microsoft, it kind of it follows anyway. So basically, we split it into 3 different bits. So I'm going to go from the bottom up. So AI platform, that's like your Azure OpenAI, if it's Azure and all the other things out there. Most of you are going to be using an AI platform. You're not going to be building your own, because using your own AI platform is a crazy amount of compute, a crazy amount of money. Most organizations aren't going to do it. You're going to use somebody else's. So that's kind of where, and so of course then, because of that, if anyone was in Lars's talk downstairs just before, shared responsibility, of course, your platform provider takes care of most of the security controls at this level. Now, that doesn't mean you don't need to care about what they're doing. You still need to go and ask. Like you do with any cloud service, like give us your reports, your third-party reports about how you're securing this, and you need to check it's okay. But most of these controls at this platform layer, you won't be dealing with just because of the way it is. Now, where it starts to change is up here, though. So at the application layer, this is where you could be building your own application on top of AI. So, or using it, that's using AI. So of course, this is where Azure OpenAI would sit. This is where you can build things. And if you're building your own application, this is where you start to be able to have a lot more control. So, you can have your third-party integrations, you can be talking to other things. And so depending on what you're doing, you may need to do more security controls here. And then up at this AI usage, I don't love the word AI usage, but that's what they decided to use in Microsoft, so we'll go with it. This is just the inputs and the outputs. Now, if you're using something like a Copilot, really the only bit where you get to play around is up here. All of this stuff Microsoft takes care of for you. But definitely at that usage layer, you're going to have some security controls. So this is another way of just breaking it down. As you can see, at the platform layer, that's all the kind of very base stuff where the models actually sit, the infrastructure that the models are running on. Your application layer, you may or may not be doing this depending on exactly what you're building. And then, of course, your AI usage at the top, you've just got your prompt and the response, so the inputs and the outputs. And love a shared responsibility model. So Microsoft did do, if you haven't seen this, this is the AI-specific one. So we released this, I think, November last year. You can get it online as well if you search. It's on our website. But essentially, this is just telling you where you have responsibility. So if you've never been to a security talk, but if you've never been to a security talk, any kind of cloud service talk, you should know that the responsibility changes depending on what service you're consuming. So of course, if you're using bring your own model, you'll be doing a lot more of the security controls yourself. If you're using Azure AI, which is kind of like a PaaS, don't take the analogy too far, it's not completely analogous. We'll be taking care of some of those, but no, some of these are model dependent. Do not ask me which model does which, because I can never remember off the top of my head, but you can go look that up. And then if it's a Copilot, actually most of this stuff is being taken care of by Microsoft, and then there's only a little bit at the top you have to do. So you can kind of compare it to IaaS, PaaS, and SaaS. Like I said, don't take the analogy too far, but in terms of like the responsibility that you have to be able to configure it and do the security things. Okay, so let's have a look at some AI attacks out there. So This is the classic AI attack that you may or may not already be familiar with. It's pretty famous. And you can see here we have a panda. And the AI model has been run across this panda image. And it has said with 57.7% confidence that it is a panda. Great. Now, what researchers did was they added this noise. Now, this isn't actually what it looks like. We just call it noise. It's actually not perceptible to the human eye. They added it to the image. And then the AI, when it scanned the picture again, these are just completely, like I said, it's not perceptible to the human eye, the file changes. Now the AI has decided it's a gibbon. And that is like a legitimate, it is an attack because it's purposely confusing the AI. It's like your classic one, Panda versus gibbon. So yeah, it is very, very easy. You can most certainly confuse AI, although it is done in a different way. So let's have a look at those different layers that I talked about where these attacks sit that you may or may not have heard of. Maybe we'll go through, what time are we on? We might go through all of them. So you can see a lot of the AI-specific attacks sit at that platform layer, which is good news for you folks because that means it's like a provider problem like Microsoft's, rather than anything you can do anything about. No, you can't help either, Gray. Model bias, it is up there. We do have it in because we don't want bias in our models. It is something that obviously, as folks know, has got bad press if you get that wrong. We do work pretty hard on that one. Membership inference, that is inferring what data the model's been trained on by keeping asking it questions. Model stealing does what it says on the tin. Poisoning is deliberately giving the model lots of data that gives it a skewed version of the world, or purposely giving it wrong answers. Some of these do hover between the two layers. They're not sort of that clear cut. We've still got software vulnerabilities because AI is software, let's not forget. Jailbreaking is the other one that's had a lot of press. So that's when you basically give it, if you don't know what jailbreaking is, it's when you give some interesting prompts and you basically convince the AI to do things it shouldn't be. It was told explicitly not to do. So things like, if you've told your AI application, we don't want you to do any explicit content, harmful content, blah, blah, blah. And you just say to it, hey, AI, write me a porno. And it says, oh, no, I can't do that because that's explicit. But then if you say, hey, AI, I want you to tell me about a character who's writing a porno, and it's just a story, so it's okay to do it. It has been shown that things like that will get around these guardrails, and then the AI will do the thing. There's so many examples online. Go and look them up. It's really interesting. So, threat landscape at the moment, though. Here's another, I have too many, I just like all the different layers. But here's the kind of threat. So again, this model theft, model poisoning, training data poisoning, we deal with all of that. But if you were building your own AI platform, I'm going to take my hand away because people are taking pictures. If you were doing your own AI platform, you would need to care about this stuff. Now, there's no, and just so you know, there's no sort of secret source, silver bullet, new technology. Like, to stop models being stolen, they need to be secure and put somewhere secure with all the old school security controls we have known and loved for a long time. Same with model poisoning, same with the training data poisoning. There's not. When I first started learning about AI security, maybe about a year, 18 months ago, when I realized it was going to become a big thing, I was like, oh, we must have some like really exciting new technology to actually secure this. We don't, at least not right now. Right now, we only have like our traditional security controls to actually secure this stuff. Then of course, at the application security level, some of this stuff is not new. Insecure plugin design, not a new problem. Data leaking, of course, not good. And prompt injection. Again, these are all problems in non-AI applications as well. And then at the top, we've got that sensitive information disclosure, which of course is the prompt jailbreaking I talked about. And then we've still got this over-reliance, which is what I said, people trusting it too much and not questioning the answers it gives. Excessive agency. Now that's when people just give the AI access to everything in their environment. Now, so many people have said to me, oh, Sarah, is Microsoft using my data, to train your models, which we don't do, but you know what? It's almost more, I would argue, oh my, really? Teams, man, on a Saturday. Lost my train of thought there. If your AI can just get everything in your environment, it's going to accidentally disclose things. Has anyone seen, there was an example, I thought this was really interesting, which is kind of a jailbreaky example. There was a car dealer somewhere in the US, and they'd obviously just gone and bought GPT-4 and put a chatbot on their website, and they were obviously paying for it, and people wanted to use GPT-4, but they didn't want to pay for it. So what they found was, because they'd put no guardrails on the chatbot, basically it should have, oh, you are a chatbot for X car dealer, do not answer any questions that aren't about cars. But they hadn't done anything like that. So there were loads of people, thousands of people, just using this car dealer's website as free GPT-4. I mean, I assume they've shut it down now, because it got a lot of press, but it's stuff like that. Everyone's like, oh, sweet, I can get at this without paying for it, because they put no guardrails on their implementation, and it was sat on their website. So, I think we need to, and I was really lucky that I got to do this. I got to do an AI security webinar series, which is still being released at the moment online, with a load of internal and external Microsoft people, really, really cool people who really know their stuff. And every single one of them, I said to them, if an organization or a person is thinking of doing AI, like what's like the number one piece of advice you would give them from a security perspective? And pretty much everyone was like, don't use AI for the sake of using AI. They said a lot of people are just using it just because, when actually it's not even an appropriate thing. They just want to say, oh, look, I put AI in this, isn't it cool? And pretty much everyone said that. So I'm not saying don't use AI, but don't use AI just because, which I think a lot of folks are doing, because it does complicate things. So this is a very busy slide. I'm not going to go through the whole thing, just point out a few things. This is some of the threat modeling scenarios that we've done in Microsoft. So you can see we've got at the bottom there the 3 different sort of layers. The good news is, as you can see, a lot of these threats actually lie at that platform layer, which is the one that you wouldn't be taking care of. But also what I wanted to point out here is the things in red, that is the MSRC AI bug bar. Now, if anybody doesn't know what MSRC are, they are the Microsoft Security Response Center. They are the folks that deal with our bug bounty programs and other Microsoft security problems. And if you didn't know, we do run a bug bounty program for pretty much everything. And now we announced the AI bug bounty program, I think it was October last year. So if you manage to find any of these things in Microsoft land and you report them to us, we might give you monies. So if you're an aspiring bug catcher, bug hunter, you can always send that to us. The other thing I wanted to point out here is the gray ones. Now the gray ones, as you can see on the box, say common cyber threats, so things that we've known and loved for a long time. And as you can see, there are way more gray things up on this side where you will be doing more things, and in the middle here, than all these cool novel attacks that are AI specific. So again, just kind of a level set around what you really need to care about when you're implementing it. And this is something that every year Microsoft releases something called the Digital Defense Report. It's free, it's a PDF, and it's all our security research teams, basically a summary of all the crazy stuff we see online, like criminal activity, nation state, et cetera, et cetera. And every single year, so you should go read it because you can just get it online. But every single year we have a slide like this. This is from this year, or maybe last year's actually. I didn't like the graphic from this year's. But every single year we have a slide that says something like this, which is, although there are all these exciting new novel attacks and we see all these things, the fact is that 98-ish% of breaches would have been prevented if people had just done basic security controls, or what we call basic security hygiene. So that is using MFA, applying least privilege, keeping things up to date, using malware, and protecting your data. Those, so I don't care what capability you use to use them. There's Microsoft capabilities, there's others, also some of it's built into platforms, but this is the stuff that will keep you protected. And let's face it, again, level set. Although we go, ooh, model poisoning, that sounds exciting, ooh, and it does. But most attackers are trying to make money, the majority. I know nation states have different have different motivations, but the majority of attackers out there are probably looking for money. So they're looking for whoever's quick and easy to own. So they're not going to spend days, months doing some really impressive model poisoning when they can just do one of these things really quickly if you're not patching. Like, they're not like super proud of their craft. They're not like, no, I must do this very, very beautiful attack. Like they're just like, oh, they're not patching, straight done. Like it's and I think we forget that. And I know the problem is I think our brains are wired that we want to protect against the really exciting new attack, when in fact it's this kind of stuff is what they go for. And it's also really easy because they know people don't do it very well. And so until we all get better at doing this, you're not going to force attackers to do more interesting attacks, because most of those AI attacks that I've talked about, they haven't really been seen in the wild that much. Jailbreaking, yes, because that one's pretty straightforward, but the model poisoning, etc., they've all been proven by researchers. So we know they can happen, but it's still too early to have really seen them in the wild on any great scale. And then last but not least, for this little bit, just because everybody asks, we've got some principles, and you should use these principles whether you're using Microsoft or not. Make sure your data is your data. Of course, if you're using Microsoft, because this is the question I get asked the most about AI, is no, we don't train your data with our model. We don't use your data to train our models. Think about it from another perspective. We don't do it, but even if we did want to do it, can you imagine how messy the platform would be if we were it was ingesting and retraining itself on all our customer data? It'd be such a mess. No. So we don't do that. So just so you know. But then there's another couple of things here, because that one we've been talking about for a long time, but there's a couple of things. Secure by design. So when we build the stuff, it is secure by design, as well as all the other Azure products are. But this is the last one I want to labor the point. So what you might expect to see here is something like secure by default. Now, secure by default is great when you don't have a lot of variation in what you're doing. So for example, you may or may not know that between Windows 10 and Windows 11, we sort of drew a line in the sand and said, if your hardware doesn't support the following security things, we're not going to let you upgrade to Windows 11. I've got a friend whose mom's processor won't upgrade to Windows 11, and she's really angry, and I'm like, it's not secure enough. And what that enabled us to do, though, was to turn on a load of security defaults in Windows. Now, Windows, because we like turning on defaults, because you could go turn it on in Windows 10, but lots of people didn't do it. Whereas in Windows 11, we were just like, we're going to turn this on, so if your hardware doesn't support it, we won't let you upgrade. Now, for something like that, secure by default is great. Now, the problem is that when you're building applications and there's so many different variables, we can't have everything secure by default in the same way. It doesn't really work. So what we do instead is we say secure by intention and in practice, which means we're trying to make it easy for you to build in a secure way on the platform, because we know that one of the reasons people don't build in a secure way is because it's hard, and everyone's like, oh no, I can't do that. I can't integrate to Entra. Oh, that's too hard. I'll just use a random string and put it in Key Vault. Please don't do that. And no one needs to admit, but I know most of you will have done it if you develop things and have worked with identity. So we're trying to make it so that doing the secure thing is the easy thing to do, because that's what we try and do when we can't do secure by default. Secure by default is great, though, by the way. Okay, so best practices. Like, this is the bit where if you were building something, you can do things. So I'm going to put all of these up. We've kind of talked about them, but developer security. Honestly, develop things securely. Please God. Just if you do that, we don't even need to worry about most of the other things. You've got operational security. Again, if you are a security person, you'll care about that. If you're a dev, just make some logs and make sure your operational security people can get at them. That's all we need you to do. Identity and access management, like I said, use proper identities. This is a whole other rant that I will not go on, but you should be using proper identities. Don't be using random strings. You should be integrating to some kind of identity provider. So whether that's Entra or the artist formerly known as Azure AD, or something else, like just not some kind of random store. And of course, I already talked about data security. That one's just so important nowadays, because AI is smart, but AI can't, unless you give it your data some kind of labeling or attributes, AI doesn't know what it can touch and what it can't. So if you say to your AI application, don't touch anything never return anything in the estate that's labeled as sensitive, it needs things to be labeled as sensitive for it to be able to do that. Like, AI is not smart enough to read your mind. So do remember that. And then also, we also need to look at things like red teaming and stuff. So everyone know what red teaming is? As in penetration testing, as in pretending to be a bad actor? Yes, cool. Okay, so we also have AI. Wait, where are we going here? No, that's not what I wanted. Wait, where's my, hang on. Wait, okay, never mind. I've got confused. I've got a bit of a fried brain today, please don't mind me. Okay, so what we do is, and Microsoft there's a slide that I thought was in there that apparently isn't, so there you go. I may have taken it out. So we actually have in Microsoft pretty much the world's first AI red team. There are some more now, but our red team started in about 2017, 2018, which is a while ago in AI terms. And that's when you actually specifically go and test AI. So we do all the normal red teaming, which is testing the infrastructure to try and get in, but then there's also the AI specific stuff. Hi, Grayson. Can you do AI red teaming? No? You sure? No, I don't think you can. It requires you to be able to type, and you're not very good at it. No, you sit there, mate. Grayson, come on. Thank you. The talk is nearly over, nearly-ish. You got to sit there anyway. And so red teaming is like doing creative prompts, like trying to do jailbreaking, things like that. And so there's this whole new bit of red teaming that's going to open up, which I think is going to be really interesting because it's not going to require any kind of technical skills in the same way. It's going to be like people being creative. Like, how can I confuse the AI? Can I gaslight it? Can I make it tell me a story to get around the things? I was reading online, apparently, I'm sure some of you, if you're following it, have seen that Llama 3 has been, is it Llama 3? Is it 3? The new Facebook model that's just come out? I forget. Is it Mistral? I thought it was called Llama 3. Anyway, there's a new model that's come out recently, and apparently it's quite susceptible to jailbreaking at the moment, so there you go. So I've been reading online, although I haven't played with it myself. But again, it's brand new. So there's going to be this whole new bit of red teaming that organizations are going to have to build up, which is a completely different skill set. But I think that's really cool because if you don't come from a traditional red teaming background, you'd still be able to get into this because it's going to be very language based and quite creative. So I think we're going to end up with a lot more different people doing it. And then, of course, look, we need to be doing, so that comes into prompt validation as well, because, of course, that's what red teamers will test. Of course, restricting the access and scope to things, look, you shouldn't have access, systems and components should not have access to things they don't need. It's the principle of least privilege. It's not new. We've been doing it a long time. And then, look, constraining user input, limit output tokens. Look, none of this is new. Can we see that apart from like these first two, this is all kind of stuff we have known and loved in secure development. And then logging, of course, make sure there is some logging and make sure it's going somewhere. I've seen so many applications that are like, yeah, we make logs. And I'm like, where do you send them? And they're like, nowhere. And you're like, cool, that's not very helpful. Like, and collection is not detection. Like, yeah.
Are there any techniques for prompt validation?
What do you mean by techniques?
Yeah, like, or any suggestions, like how to validate the prompts.
Well, you mean as in if the prompt is correct or not?
No, in terms of security, right? So the prompt validation is one of the areas that you're suggesting, but are there more specific guidelines?
Yeah, there are online. So we do have some. I mean, it's a new part of security testing in general, so it's still very much in its infancy. So unlike the rest of red teaming that's quite mature and there's quite a lot of established processes, we have a risk framework, which I'm going to talk about in a minute, and there are some techniques and tools. We recently released like a month, 6 weeks ago, something called Pirate, which is also a way of helping do that testing, but there's not a ton of stuff out there yet just because it's still very new. And It is a bit of trial and error because it's so new. Even like Microsoft and Meta and even all the vendors who are making these platforms, we're doing testing as well. But it's also very new for us, and so there's not established techniques yet and frameworks and testing in the same way. Although it is developing very, very quickly. So there's some stuff, but not as much as it would. There's not like I'll just run this script and it will test everything. I'm not sure, due to the nature of generative AI, that we'll ever be able to get to that, but we'll see what happens. It's developing. And then, of course, other things that you need to look at as well is making sure people are making sure that when you've got new AI stuff, making sure that people are giving you feedback as well. This is one of probably not always the thing, not that we haven't always encouraged users to give feedback, but I think for generative AI, it's really important that we get feedback about if it's not doing what it's supposed to be doing. Again, people who shouldn't have access to a generative AI application shouldn't have it, unsurprisingly. And like I was saying before, this blocking sensitive information. Of course, to block sensitive information, you need to label it. So you need to use something. Now, there's plenty of tools out there to actually do that as well. Like I said, in Microsoft land, it's Purview. There are other things as well. Yep.
Is Microsoft developing any reporting tools, actually?
Sorry, say that again. I didn't quite catch that.
No, is Microsoft developing any reporting tools, actually, for that particular use case? Quite similar to other securities, trying to bring in some...
Do you mean the reporting issue thing?
Yeah.
Well, it's built into all the co-pilots at the moment. There's already a feedback loop in there. If you're using a Copilot Studio or a Microsoft Copilot for blah, whatever, because there's so many of them now, there's already a feedback loop in there to do that. We actually have that built into the UI. If you were building your own application, kind of from the OpenAI level, then you would have to build that in. But it's certainly possible. Yeah. Oh, what was I saying? Oh, yeah, I was just saying, so if you're wondering how to do data labeling, by the way, it is done. If you're using M365 and you've got Azure rights, and by doing role-based access in Azure for M365, you've done this to a degree anyway if you haven't realized it, but really you should do it more explicitly by using something like Purview. I know data security tooling used to be terrible, so if you've ever used it maybe 3 or 4 years ago or before that, it was horrible and clunky. Now it's much nicer. So again, go and have a look at it if you haven't already. Purview is the Microsoft one, of course, but there are other things out there as well, but it just needs to be labeled so you can tell the AI not to use it. So we've also got, we released this a couple of years ago because we are on the ball with this, as you may have noticed. Microsoft's usually kind of ahead of the curve. We do have this risk assessment framework. You can go and, if you search security risk assessment framework, it'll come up. And it basically tells you some of the things that we think that you should be testing for. So I'm clicking the wrong way. Are we clicking? Are we not happy? Did I turn it off? Who knows? Let's do it like that. So these are the security controls that we recommend you are looking at. Now, it's not completely comprehensive. Obviously, this is like a high level, but these are the things you should be looking at when you're doing a generative AI type assessment when you're trying to assess it. So some of this stuff, again, not new. Incident management, system monitoring, business continuity and disaster recovery, but some of these other ones are more specific to AI as well. So that's also something to bear in mind. Now, last but not least, oh, no, that's not what I wanted to do. Last but not least then, we have now some incoming AI security standards. So, of course, we know that most industries have standards. Industries and territories and industry verticals have some kind of standards around security. So AI is obviously coming up fast. In fact, the Artificial Intelligence Act in the EU, I think, may have just been released or is very, very close to being released. There's loads of standards out there, but the two that you really need to care about is the one from North America and the one from the EU. So the NIST AI Management Framework framework is going to be the North American one, and the Artificial Intelligence Act is the one from the EU. So unsurprisingly, as is usually the way, the North American one is voluntary, the EU one is mandatory. So they are, as I said, I think artificial intelligence may have just come out. I could be wrong, or it's very close to coming out. So, of course, some people are worried it's going to be like GDPR and it's going to be very far-reaching. But if you start to read the wording of it, you can see that it's a lot less specific than GDPR was, and that's because AI is so new. That could change again with rewrites. But it's worth bearing in mind that at some point in the not too distant future, when you're building things, you're going to be subject to security standards. Most folks are. So it's definitely worth going to have a look at them and seeing that you are adhering to them. As I said, unlike something like GDPR, they are much less prescriptive because the AI is so new, we don't have really good established best practices about everything yet. But particularly, obviously, as we know with the EU legislation is usually a lot kind of stricter, so definitely have a look at that one.
Sarah, with GDPR,
Yeah.
has anyone tested like right to erasure with like an AI model yet or anything like that? Or
That's a good question. So at least, so I can talk to it from a Microsoft perspective. So because the models sit down at the platform layer in OpenAI, and your data does not go down into the model and get retained there. It's that we call up the model into your tenant, and then you ask the model whatever, and then it uses your data as like the grounding and the logic. So and then it just, it gives the answer and it sort of dissipates. So it would never be down at the platform layer. So as a customer, what you would, as long as you had the ability to remove it from your tenant, you should be good. Now, I don't know because I'm not privy to if anybody, I don't know if there's anywhere we would train models where someone could say, I would like to think we probably scrub for this exact reason. We probably don't train our own models at the OpenAI level with any PII, because then if someone asked to be forgotten, that would be much more difficult. But I think, yeah, definitely as an OpenAI consumer, as long as you could remove it from your tenant, I think you'd be good. Yeah, now that would be different. I mean, certainly say you did have your own model that you were training yourself, and so not using like OpenAI in the same way. If you had your own model and you had trained it on PII, which I probably wouldn't recommend doing anyway if you could not get away with it for various reasons, but including this, that would be pretty difficult, is my understanding, to remove that. You probably have to just can the model and retrain it. So the moral of the story is don't use PII. I do think that most folks, when they're using stuff, I don't know, say health or something, that they are being scrubbed to a degree that it wouldn't be considered PII. It would more be like, I don't know, female 26 has got blah. If they were looking for trending things or whatever, rather than needing specific names. But I think we're too early to know. I think that we'll probably have to wait to some kind of test case to see how that one pans out. But in general, just don't put PII where you don't need it. Like, don't have it in logs, don't have it in security logs, don't have it anywhere. There's no new reason to have PII in security logs. I've had this discussion a number of times, but no, don't do it. Oh yeah, that wasn't working, was it? Okay, so as you can see now, everyone is changing into an AI expert. It used to be zero trust in security land, but we're going to AI. This is that responsible AI framework. Mostly I've been talking about privacy and security. Gentleman over there was talking about bias and stuff, which kind of comes into our fairness pillar as well. But responsible AI is kind of a big thing. It is kind of hard to extricate security from it, which is why we have it in there. But you should go and read more about this. There's lots of responsible AI stuff. We're fairly forward thinking on this. We set up our Office of Responsible AI about 5 or 6 years ago. Again, very early. If you want to, there's a load of useful links of things I've mentioned on that QR code. It's not a dodgy QR code, I promise. Yeah, it's just pictures of the dogs. It's just literally pictures of the dogs. If you want to come get random stickers, I have swag. I'll hang around out. I don't know. Oh no, it's break time now, isn't it? So I'll hang around here if you want to come and ask some more questions, and I'll have stickers and you can come and say hi to the dogs. And thanks for listening. Hope that was good, interesting, and have a good rest of your day as well. Take a bow, Grayson. Take a bow. Yes, Bubs. I know.